this one paints it a little bit different. So you know that you want to attract that right company to your community. It would be a game changer. And if that opportunity came about and that the right company was looking to relocate, would you be ready to act? Do you really realize all of the ingredients that helps you prepare to really secure that new opportunity? Next slide, please. So what does that really mean? What are these ingredients that make a community ready for that type of investment? And they really can be boiled down into 4 major elements: quality of life, accessible land, trained workforce, and good infrastructure. Of course, within these 4, there are so many other moving parts. Quality of life are those wonderful things that we enjoy about communities, the entertainment, the recreation opportunities, the right housing, access to healthcare, and good schools. When we talk about accessible land, it's not just the idea of property that's affordable or public owned, but that it's ready with the improvements, it has the appropriate zoning, and it's proximate to these amenities as well as services and suppliers. With the trained workforce, we all know that it's the availability, the preparedness, and now we're looking at the diversity of the available workforce as we have new companies looking to our region. And then, of course, infrastructure, and we can't emphasize this enough. And that's, both the access and the capacity to move people and goods, but it's also having all those utilities available at the site for the type of company or business that we're wanting to attract. Next slide, please. But all of that is great when you have those ingredients, and a lot like cooking, we can have everything in our pantry or refrigerator, but we need that recipe and that chef to bring it all together. So what do we really need? And that's that coordination piece, that vision or purpose that is very clear, that's articulated. Then those priorities, what you want, the types of jobs you want to create. You have the right people at the table. You know who they are. They've all been in these conversations. They all bring something to the game. And then there's that consistent message. So there's no conflicts among the various players so that your community is ready. Next slide, please. And so how can GNRC help? And many of you are very familiar with a lot of the services and assistance we provide. Our local planning assistance, our fabulous research and analytics team that I think could produce data on anything that you give them. And then, of course, our ability to help write and administer grants on your behalf. But then there's this big piece that runs through all of it, and that's the resources that we have at GNRC that supports this collaboration and coordination across all these boundaries, our county boundaries, our city boundaries, our levels of government, and then bringing all of our economic sectors together. So as we move forward in the next slides, I probably will say the word for the day is going to be alignment. So next slide, please. So what does this really mean? And this support that we can bring, and that is the power of convening, that you as our council, the mayors, our business leaders, and our state officials, we all have a shared responsibility to develop this strategy. And again, there you see the word align, to align policy, to align investment, so that as a region, we are sharing in the economic prosperity, we have the shared vision, and all boats are rising. Next slide, please. Okay. I do want to mention, as we go in this effort, what we're looking for is not setting out to duplicate any of the wonderful work that's happening, but that alignment piece. And now why you should really care about this regional economic development strategy. And we have 5 great, wonderful reasons that will hopefully spur your interest. and desire to get this going. And as we look through each of these 5, we can pick out these keywords. The first one, readiness. We got to be ahead of this game. This is everyone is trying to attract jobs and retain jobs, and so we have to be ready. Leverage in the second item. Public investments, public resources can only go so far. And so we need to make sure that we have a great strategy for how we're going to leverage those investments to grow the economic opportunities in our region. Third, it goes back to priorities and alignment so that we can minimize any of these conflicts between competing objectives and priorities that may arise. The fourth is competitiveness, and we all know how competitive the economic development world is, and we have great footing now, and we need to maintain that and just continue to rise above. And then we need to make sure that we are ready to recover from any economic or disaster or downturn or any disruptor that may come our way, and be more resilient when we face those things in the future. Of course, we can't underscore or overlook our responsibility to complete this regional economic development strategy because it is a federal requirement so that we can make our communities in our region eligible for grants through the U.S. Economic Development Administration. We've all seen this quote: when we fail to plan, we plan to fail. And this gets at what happened, what are things that we want to avoid, that we can avoid with proper planning. And these are some boondoggles that I love when you can throw in words when you don't get to use them every day. Boondoggles, when we don't really develop comprehensive plans. And I know you all have heard of the bridge to nowhere, but think about maybe exits or road extensions that have been built, but the economic development investment never materialized. And then Field of Dreams, if you build it, will they come? You know, if you're Kevin Costner, maybe, but sometimes communities find themselves with empty spec buildings or large parcels of developable land that lack the appropriate infrastructure. And then we've all seen these as we've drive through areas where there have been major venues that have shuttered, or you know, shopping centers or various things like that leave these communities with eyesores and contribute to neighborhood deterioration. So again, with proper planning, how can we avoid some of these boondoggles? Next slide, please. So now I hope that you all are ready to get started and are already thinking about input and ways to help guide this. So this is what the development of our strategy looks like on a large scale, since with 4 phases between now and September, when the council will adopt the new strategy. And you know, that we're beginning with listening and learning from our stakeholders. We need to hear from you. You're the keys to how this strategy unfolds. Then we'll come together to brainstorm goals and objectives. Then we'll prioritize those into strategies and actions. And then finally, with a draft for the board to adopt. And it won't end there. These are continuous dialogues, you know, our assistance beyond with helping identify and secure opportunities to further the plan. Then finally, well, not finally, as I mentioned, the big part of this is stakeholder engagements. And this is a regional plan that we need everyone that has an interest in this, from business leaders, chambers, economic development officials, involved. But it's driven by our advisory committee. And I don't know how many of you, and I'm not going to ask a show of hands, even if we were in person, realize that each county has a business rep on the full council. And Michael greeted our business reps that are on the call today. Thank you for being here. We look forward to working with you, and this advisory committee will be key in helping guide the process and develop our recommendations. And but that, again, we still have a lot of opportunities for stakeholders to be involved in this process through interviews, focus groups, and surveys. And then we will be doing regular check-ins with our elected officials and your staff. Next slide, please. So again, let's get started. I hope everybody's excited about this as we are. If you've worked with me before, you may realize that you get some homework, and this is another one of those cases. We're going to be sending you, and it may already be live, a survey that we're going to ask you to complete, and your responses are really going to help chart our first steps forward as well as the overall course. So please, we're asking you to complete that and submit it by the deadline that is in the survey. And Michael just pasted it into the chat. So I know that was quick. I think I'm ready for the next slide. And just to let you know, our team, if you have any questions or want information, please feel free to reach out to me or Matt Von Lunen. Many of you know Matt, but I wanted to take just a few seconds to recognize the rest of our fabulous team. All will be plugged in during this process, as well as other folks from GNRC. But we have James Dean, who is our Housing Programs Coordinator. We have Rashida Pardue, who works on, manages a lot of our community development programs, especially as they relate to arts and tourism. And also assists Wanda Smith and Gwen Schaefer with our small business lending team. And we're excited that this week we have the addition of Donald Anthony, who brings some planning experience into our economic development world and really help with our alignment efforts. And then starting on March 8th, we have Amy Napoli, who will be bringing some background from the chamber sector and tourism sector to build out our teams so that we can provide you with a real well-rounded assistance as we move into this new phase of economic development planning. And with that, Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you for additional comments.
Well, thank you, Angie. Thank you for introducing your team and the new folks that are going to be joining us soon. Look forward to working with Donald and Amy. Amy, I see you on the screen right now. It's good to see your face. Well, I think, you know, as we sort of part ways with this agenda item, I think a couple of thoughts. One, you know, even though this is required by federal law, let's just know that in the back of our minds. This is not really why we do these things. We really do these things for the 5 reasons that Angie talked through a little bit earlier. And it's really important as we go through our efforts to accomplish those goals that we do not duplicate the efforts of others. And so we're going to be relying on these business reps that will form our advisory committee to make sure that we adequately define roles and responsibilities across the region so we can appropriately partner with the chambers and ECD officials and other folks who are the ones who really are responsible for creating and attracting and retaining jobs. It's our job to make sure that there's good public policy that helps with zoning and land use policies to make things happen, that there's good infrastructure, and that infrastructure improvement funding is aligned to the vision of the region with respect to economic development, so we're not building roads to nowhere, and that we're minimizing those natural conflicts between growth and conservation, because there are tough choices ahead with respect to how we balance that. And the sooner we talk about those conflicts, the easier it's going to be for everybody involved. So again, we're here to help support you implement your vision for economic development within your community, but within a context that is a much larger sort of economic market area than just any one political jurisdiction. So we're looking forward to get started. You can help us today by going to gnrc.org/survey/economy. It's just the first of many opportunities that you'll have to plug in, but it'll help us get off to the right start. So thank you, Angie. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mayor Brown.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Skipper. Thank you, Ms. Hubbard. Particularly, thank you, Ms. Hubbard. You truly make it sound very, very exciting and something interesting. And so everyone, please do complete the survey for this effort as we move forward. The next item is the GNRC membership dues estimate for fiscal year 2022. I'll turn it over to Michael Skipper. I may also have some comments because we did discuss this at length at our meeting last week. So, Mr. Skipper.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. And Mayor Brown refers to the Finance and Personnel Committee that meets, scheduled to meet monthly to sort of consult with staff on issues related to the budget and the operations of the organization. We did have a conversation with them about what you're going to be seeing today. But before I get to the dues estimates, which are included in your packet, so you can jump the gun if you want, I do want to make sure everybody is familiar with how our budget works. And so in any given year, we typically have about $12 to $15 million agency budget. This year, the 2021 budget year is a little bit different because we've got a pretty nice infusion of CARES Act and other COVID relief funding that's flowing through the agency and getting out the door to help people that are out across the region struggling through the pandemic. But in any given year, about 60% of our money is coming from federal grants. And there's a long list of federal agencies that are investors in our organization. Most of that money is flowing through a state agency on its way to us. About 25% of our money is coming from state programs. A little bit of this is unrestricted cash that comes from the state budget as defined by the Tennessee Code. But the majority of this is money where the state is actually hiring GNRC to be an extension of their work with each of you across Middle Tennessee. And then 16% of our funding comes from non-federal, non-state sources. The biggest source of funding from local funds is program revenue. So we do fee-for-service work as a consultant, as we provide technical assistance to many of you. You pay us for those services at cost in a way that's separate from the membership dues that you pay. But about 4% of our overall agency budget is funded through general membership dues, and about 3% is from program dues. The program dues are largely related to the transportation planning work program that supports the federal NPO that we staff at GNRC for the Nashville area. One thing I really want to point out here is that even though the dues are 4% of our total budget, it is the most important piece of our budget, because without those dues, we're not able to fully access the other millions of dollars that are provided to us in grants. Many of these grants provide or require matching funds, and so the dues provide matching funds to those grants. The dues also help us be able to pay for activities and expenses at GNRC that are not reimbursable by grants. There is a list of things that just aren't reimbursable by grants. And then dues also help us to supplement the cost of providing services on behalf of the state when there isn't sufficient state funding, but we're not willing to cut services to the public. And this is often seen with our aging and disability services, where we have used dues to augment the funding that we're getting from the state to make sure that Middle Tennesseans aren't impacted by that limited funding, to the extent that we're able to do that. As far as where our money goes, about 60% of that is staying in-house and supporting the professionals. We've got 80 professionals on board, so 60% of it is staying to fund the professional staffing of the organization. But 4 out of every $10 are being passed through our organization under your direction and guidance as an executive board, to local communities and nonprofits, largely for aging and disability services, but we also pass through home repair grants, grants to incorporate arts into local communities, and grants to help with tourism marketing across Middle Tennessee, just to name a few of those. And so you can see the list of state and federal funding partners that ultimately come together to form the GNRC budget. Our budget operates on the state fiscal year, like many of you, if not all of you, if you're at a public agency, but we do not adopt our budget until September. And the reason for that is because much of our funding, like I mentioned earlier, is sourced from federal grants. And so we sort of wait until we get closer to that federal fiscal year, so we have the clarity to be able to dot the I's and cross the T's. That said, we do want to get the dues estimates out to you as far and as in advance. We know that increases your probability of being able to pay those when the time comes. A look at, if you're interested, you can find more details about the current GNRC budget at gnrc.org. annual budget. I think it's that simple. But again, this table was just going to illustrate that the membership dues that you pay this year account for about 3% of the $20 million that is included in the adopted budget. Real quick, the dues are currently assessed at 31 cents per capita across the region. So municipal governments and county governments are paying based on their population. We derive those population figures from the U.S. Census, specifically the one-year estimates that are produced by the American Community Survey. And we use the estimates of 2 years ago each time we renew the dues estimates each year. This is a year in which we will have census figures. And we're going to be watching the timing of that, and we will continue to have conversations about the influence that the new census numbers will have on the assessments. But the total amount that we're estimating to need from dues is largely locked in. What we'd be talking about is how that is distributed among communities within the region. So looking at 2021 dues as adopted, we generated about $622,000 for the current year budget. If we keep the rate the same and just apply it to the slight increase in population across the region that has occurred over the last year, we'd net about $9,000 in additional revenue as a result. But the issue is that the dues have not been in recent years sufficient to be able to fully draw down some of the grant opportunities that come our way. But more importantly, they haven't been sufficient to cover those costs, those additional costs for some of the state programs that we're providing where we don't want to cut services to the community, and not sufficient to cover the cost of the non-reimbursables. And so as a result, we have been digging into our reserves, and despite sort of that really good sounding net position that was described in the audit, that is an accurate number, but as Curtis said, it's very contingent on the timing of invoicing and payments from the grant programs that support the organization. So given that we had proposed a dues increase last year, we were going into the pandemic with a lot of uncertainty, so we elected to defer that. But the dues increase from 31 cents per capita to 35 cents per capita is back on the table. And so we ask that you budget the amount that is provided in the packet, with the understanding that the conversation will continue throughout the year and no final decisions about the final dues amounts will be made until our annual meeting with the Regional Council governing body on September 23rd of this year. So Mayor Brown, I'll turn it back over to you. I know you chair the Finance and Personnel Committee for any reflection that you have on that conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Skipper. I think you actually covered it very, very well. So I appreciate that. I would certainly open the floor for any questions related to this. There may be some, but I think you covered the concerns that we discussed and how the census could potentially impact and the need that is there. So, and particularly my wish that we have the numbers so that we may budget for them regardless of what we may do later in this year. So anyone with any questions?
Mayor Brown, this is Faye DeMassimo for Mayor Cooper. I just wanted to reiterate again, we've had some ongoing conversations with the staff at GNRC, but reiterate again, we still have questions remaining around the dues increase and what the additional 4 cents per capita will leverage in those non-reimbursables and the state program matters that Michael mentioned during his presentation. And so obviously these are tough times for everyone, for every community, and seem to get tougher. We've experienced a lot in this entire region over the last year. So obviously it's a tough time to be asking for a dues increase. And so I just wanted to reiterate again our desire for some very specific detail around those additional costs and additional opportunities that would be leveraged so that we can understand that return on investment and potential value and so forth. So thank you very much for letting us offer that.
And we appreciate that request, Faye, and we'll do everything we can to be as transparent as possible about the proposed dues increase. It is a tough time, and we understand that. Which is one of the reasons why we think it's necessary, because it's a tough time to leave state and federal funds on the table when so many people across Middle Tennessee are in need of help. And so, that's really what our budget is about, is helping Middle Tennesseans. at some point we'll talk about the operations and salaries and all that good stuff as well. But we've been pretty good clear history here of this organization not having inflated admin or overhead or salary rates. Our party is certainly to make sure that we're drawing down the money that this region deserves from those programs, but we need to be able to leverage it with dues. So I appreciate the request, Faye, and we'll take any requests from anybody else too, and we can try to localize the numbers for you as much as possible to help you get through that local budgeting process and feel good about being, a part of the regional council.
Thank you, Mr. Skipper. Thank you, Mr. Massimo. That's a good reminder to me that I said last week, and I think it's good for you all to hear that the GNRC staff was asked to provide kind of reminder information to all of the entities with the dues increase proposal. I think Metro is probably going to desire something a bit more specific, but I think for all of us as mayors, it's a wonderful opportunity for us to go back to our councils and boards and just remind them exactly what GNRC does for the region and what the benefits are that we receive as local entities. And so they're going to be distributing that to us as we move into our budget discussions with our individual boards and councils. And I think it's like I said, a great opportunity for the people we work with, but also for the communities that we serve. I will say I don't know that they're going to necessarily be able to provide new opportunities for GNRC, but certainly to be able to sustain the ones that we are doing in the region. So any other questions for Mr. Skipper at this point? Okay, I don't see anyone indicating that they wish to discuss. So with that, we will move along, and that brings us to the chair's report. I do want to say thank you again to the GNRC staff as a whole for all that they are continuing to do to serve us during difficult times that just seem to get more difficult, don't they? But I am confident that there are better days ahead, and if we can stay the course and get there, we will all be better off for the work that is being done now. I want to say special thanks again to the finance department and Ms. Wilson. Great job on a very, very good audit. Also want to mention the Transportation Policy Board, the Technical Committee, and Mayor Reed for their work on the Regional Transportation Plan. I know that a lot of effort from so much of the GNRC staff has gone into that, and that was passed at the earlier meeting. So that's exciting. And I think that would be all from me as the chair, and at this point I will move along to the executive director's report. Mr. Skipper.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. And I know we're coming up on an hour, and I'm going to be respectful of your time, but I do have a couple of updates for you. First off, let me introduce two new members of our leadership team. I think they're both online with us. So if you're online, and you could go ahead and turn your camera on and say a few words here after I introduce you. But the first person I'd like to introduce is our new Chief Legal Counsel, Candy Henry, who started with us this week. She's got great experience working with public agencies across Middle Tennessee, the Nashville MTA, the Nashville Electric Service, to name a few. We're very excited to have her on board. She's got big shoes to fill, those that were vacated by Layla Smith a few months ago, but we have every ounce of confidence in Candy's ability to take us to the next level, to leverage the law to the extent possible to make quality of life across Middle Tennessee even better than it is today. So Candy, you want to say hello to everyone? Then you're on mute, of course. Hey, Candy, you're on mute if you can hear me.
At least it's a little less embarrassing because I have a high level of confidence that everybody's done that at least once. So let me start over. Good afternoon. Thank you, Michael, for your kind words. And let me just say, I'm really grateful to be joining GNRC. It is truly a great organization. And everyone I've talked to in my network says the same things. And I've appreciated hearing from everyone today and look forward to working with everybody. So thanks for welcoming.
Thank you very much, Candy. And then the second person I'd love to introduce to you is our new Director of Community and Regional Planning. Her name is Jessica Hill, and she joined us earlier this year after making the hop over the Appalachians from Charlotte, where she worked for our sister organization called the Central Regional Council, which does fantastic work in that part of the country. Encourage you to check out that website to get a sense of her skill set and what she brings to the table. But Jessica, are you online with us today?
I am, and
hello.
thank you. Thank you for introducing me, Michael, and it's a pleasure to be here. And it's been great getting to know everybody at GNRC and virtually meeting every one of you on either the Transportation Policy Board or the TCC. And I look forward to a time when we can meet in person. And again, just been a pleasure and really look forward to the future.
All right, well, thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Candy. I'll go ahead and move along in my report. A couple of reminders, and if Ms. Hubbard, if you have anything to add here, please feel free to chime in. But I do want to remind everybody about the COVID Recovery Loan Program that is being supported with funding through the CARES Act. Angie mentioned earlier Gwen and Rhonda, who are on our small business lending team, and they're standing by to help you sort through the opportunities with this. But just a quick plug to let you know that that is out there. Also, just a reminder for, I know the Alphabet Soup Day is often full of acronyms and confusing sort of delineations and roles and responsibilities and meeting times and so on and so forth. So we've tried to make it easy for you. So gnrc.org/calendar is where to keep up with the meeting schedule. We've got recurring committees and boards that meet throughout the month, all with a very important purpose. If you're interested in learning more about those boards and committees, you can find that at gnrc.org/member-guide. That'll be a static link that goes to an updated living document that describes everything you want to know about GNRC, why it exists, why it's important, what your role is in all of it, and how we operate as an agency. And so with that, let me check my notes. I think that's all I had, Mayor Brown, but I do also want to echo your congratulations to the Transportation Policy Board for adopting a major update to the Regional Transportation Plan today, allocating more than $10 billion to roadway and transit projects across the region between 2021 and 2045. That is about half the amount of money that we already know we need to be spending on needs that have been identified through your local planning processes or other regional efforts. And so we have a lot more work to do to build coalitions of support for increasing investments in transportation, which ultimately get us to where we want to go with the economic prosperity that Angie talked about earlier. So with that, I'll conclude my report and turn it back over to Mayor Brown and her cat.
Yes, I'm not a cat. Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Henry. Welcome, Ms. Hill. We're excited that you're on board, and I appreciate your joining this organization. I hope you'll find the work very satisfying, and we will be most appreciative of what you bring to the table. With that, I'll ask if there's any other business to come forward this month from any members of the board. All right. I guess now we have completed all the business, and so we are okay to adjourn. So everyone stay safe, take care of your people, and we will see you next month. All the best. Bye.